at the Hall of
Hey, welcome back to Chasenshep, where Mondays are for the mind. We're live on every outlet at 6 p.m. Central Time. So hit the follow to the channel, make sure that you're notified, so you can join us every Monday. Chasenshep is now live.
Chasenshep.
Mondays are for the mind.
This July we're getting a little left as we have all the directors from the upcoming movie F on the show.
Ayo. What's going on, everybody? And welcome to the July edition of Mondays for the Mind. It's an exciting month here at Chasenshep. And no better way to kick it off than that awful storm we've had this past week that knocked some people's power out. Hopefully everybody's doing okay.
It's true.
That's why we got old Sheppy here with me today.
I didn't trust the internet. I didn't trust my internet at home, so I didn't want to lag. So I'm in person here.
So we're kicking this off, the upcoming anthology horror film F, Tales from the End Times. We got all the directors this month, and to start things off, we have our rival from across the lake, the creator of Camp Crystal-Lake, John Isberg.
Wait, you mean Silverlake?
Silverlake.
What did I say?
Crystal Lake.
Oh, Crystal Lake? Definitely not the guy who makes
That's down the
different
road. Yeah. They're old. So we're. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Good.
We sat down to watch the movie on July 1st. Excellent way to kick off July.
Nice.
Definitely a good way to set the summer vibe. We enjoyed it.
Nice.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, most definitely. We had a little thunderstorm kick like halfway through too.
Oh,
It added that element, man.
Yeah.
It really did.
Oh yeah. I feel weird now because I'm like not in my basement of solitude. So now I'm just because I have no Wi-Fi and our house got hit with we had no power for like 4 days. So like what we were talking about before, but it's crazy. So anyway, so yeah. How you guys doing?
Great. Yeah, we're doing good. We're ready to get this month kicked off. I don't know where to begin. I think we should begin, with the obvious here. Camp Chasenshep versus Camp Silverlake. When we started doing Summer Camp of Horrors, we had no idea about a little film called Final Summer that was brewing parallel to us. We had no idea.
Yeah.
Our Summer Camp of Horrors, we had done the one short film beforehand, Easter Sunday, and we're like, hey, we want to do something else, and it just snowballed into a bigger and bigger production where it was only the two of us running everything. And all of a sudden, we had a location and actors and all this stuff. And then the cherry on top of it all was, as we're taking all of this on with absolutely no budget, there is this other movie shooting at the exact same camp we chose to shoot at the exact same time. Also a horror summer camp thing. We're like,
right, yeah.
Odds.
What are the odds?
So thus begun, the way I described it the other day to somebody, I was like, it's kind of like you get your main events and comic books, and then you have your solo comics, and the main events impact the solo stuff pretty hard, but the solo stuff really doesn't do much for the main event, and we're like the solo comic, and you guys are like the main event. We definitely felt the impact more so from you guys, I think, than you ever felt from us.
Sorry.
But
I don't know. I think I'm still feeling the impact from our solo event or main event or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Still getting my butt kicked every day on that one, but yeah.
I liked it though, man. I liked how they knowing that and whatnot, and watching it, getting to see like it's just totally different, whole vibes than we were putting out or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I really, like I said, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was a big fan growing up, Friday the 13th, so I could see a lot of felt like inspiration from those old camp story horror in the woods, and I'm always for that kind of shit. So
me too. No, I kind of grew up with some older cousins who worked at video stores. My one cousin Doug worked at a video store, and then I'd go visit, like, you know, it was like my cousin Tim and Simon and Doug, and they were always talking about, you know, Friday the 13th and who'd win a fight between like Jason and Freddy and all of that. And so yeah, it was kind of fun to do that. But it's funny, like, because I remember watching some of the episodes of your series and being like, oh, they're at the dining hall there, and oh, they're over at the, you know, all these different. So it's kind of fun to like see all the locations, and I remember like seeing you guys walking around sometimes too. So sorry to ruin your schedule there.
Oh, that's been all right. It really didn't impact us too bad until you guys came in and shot for that month, which we knew going into it that you guys were going to be there that month. I don't know what y'all did in that month's time, but when we came back, those Camp Drake people wanted nothing to do with us no more. I think we're about done with people filming.
Right. Huh.
They booted us from the camp. We had, I think, 1 or 2 days left of shooting. We had completely replanned scheduling and locations and all that stuff on the fly.
I mean, luckily, woods are abundant.
Yes,
so
woods are abundant.
Yeah, woods because we're in the woods, you know.
Right.
And we didn't have no camp. It's not like we had the camp cabins the whole time. So it's
right.
Like,
just those main structures, really.
Oh yeah. No, that's the funny thing about woods is like you can kind of shoot anywhere in a way. And so I remember I did some pickups. One I did in like Crystal Lake Park for a couple of shots. Another one I found, it was like I needed an insert of this one character, and it was like October or something. I found like the last tree with some green on it. And we like parked the truck in front of this tree, shot it kind of tight. It's a shot of like Warren Copper when he like looks at Lexi and he's like, I'll kill everybody, kind of a look, you know, because I'm like, I needed that shot. And I was like, hey dude, you know, so we found like one tree basically. And then I shot a couple of things like in my backyard, in the alleyway there's some trees and stuff. And I was, because, you know, sometimes you need that extra insert shot or whatever. You're like, yeah. So
yeah, I think we utilized the Camp Crystal Lake Park here. I just Crystal Lake again. I can't stop. Crystal Lake Park. We use that for pickup shots all the time.
That's right. That's right. There is a Crystal Lake in Urbana, which is funny to think.
I came to choose Camp Drake because I grew up on that very same road that Camp Drake is on, just down the way. That's where I grew up, and so I had always known it was down there. And it wasn't until we went to shoot this that I ventured farther back past the gates and saw what all was back there. I was like, well, this is perfect. And this is right in my back door of my hometown. And so we were a little surprised when there's an identical thing going on. But, you know, obviously I think the big difference is that you guys are a lot more horror than us. Whereas, you know, a lot of people saw our trailer and thought we pulled from Friday the 13th a lot. That's kind of what they were expecting. Some people said, and we really don't, other than like the names of some characters, the shirt designs. Like there's a few things that obviously Mason Snorries, you know, there's some things that we pulled from, but we always pitched ours as Wet Hot American Summer meets Evil Dead.
Totally. Oh yeah. And I can see that too, because I could see the Wet Hot American Summer. I mean, I love those 80s. I just remember in the 80s, you know, you had all of those summer camp movies. There was Meatballs with Bill Murray, and then we were talking about Michael J. Fox earlier, but he was in a TV show called Poison Ivy, where it's like he was a camp counselor and he was all about like this girl across the lake. I think like not Meredith Baxter. What's she was like Joe in Facts of Life. This is probably dating me, but like but she had like the darker hair and she was always like opposite Michael J. Fox. I'm trying to says Nancy. I think it's Nancy McKeon. Oh my God, this is crazy. Anyway,
that I was stated today because I talked about somebody was wanting to go see Dune 2. They're like, I'm going to go see Dune 2. I'm going to go up to Chicago and see it in IMAX. It'll be like the best IMAX in the state. And I was like, well, you better get a ticket beforehand because, you know, like back when I was in high school in a big city, you know, them shit sell out fast. I was like, we were trying to see Freddy versus Jason. And every theater was sold out. And someone's like, damn, that shows your age. Freddy versus Jason in theaters? I was in high school. What do you mean?
Right. Yeah. It's like, dude, whatever, man. Like, you wish you saw Freddy versus Jason in theater, man. That's what you say. Yeah. All this all this Harrison Ford being 80 years old, all that. No, I'm just kidding. I want to see that though, by the way. But I think it's, I've been watching some people are like, oh, it's not the same. I'm like, the guy's 80, man. Like, give him a break. You know, he's still doing it. Like, I want to see you at 80 still, like, you know, drawing people, making a movie, whatever. Like, get off his back, critics. Critics, you're the worst, man. I don't know. Anyway, so I digress.
I am curious. I thought about this question last night to bring up to all of you guys this month. With criticism, with your film, how do you take it? Has anybody approached you just being like, this wasn't for me, you know, sort of thing? Like, would you rather hear that from people and take that constructive feedback, or would you rather just be like, if you didn't like it, I don't need it?
No, I think it's good. I think that it's interesting. It's good to separate what is helpful versus what is like just some troll, I think, or also to understand like your audience, because it was interesting. Like the first festival we went to Popcorn Frights back in August of last year, and the film was kind of still pretty rough. I think there was a bunch of scenes that weren't really working, and the edit needed to be tightened up a lot. And so, but we had some really good reviews from that, but then we also had some negative ones too. But there was one I remember that was like critical, but in a way that was really helpful, where they're like, I could see that there was something there, and we just needed to tighten up more things and make things connect more. And so that was really helpful. Because I think, yeah, it's like, you know, I spent, I think like 14 months at that point editing the film, you know, just constantly. And then I had shown it. I would have like private screens for friends to come over and just watch it and like give me feedback. What do you think? Da, 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 da. You know, people who are like with the film, and then people who are just friends who are horror fans, to get a sense of what everybody was reacting to. Because, you know, you show it to your crew and they're like, this is the best thing ever. And you're like, yeah, I want the people who don't care and have no investment in this film to really watch it critically. Because then I think you can learn. It's really, I think the other interesting thing is that, you know, like to go to some of you know, like the festival circuit, it's like, I feel like I started to understand, like with these horror festivals, some of them, like the film festival side, they're kind of going for these kind of more art house horror, like A24 kind of horror. It's like a little bit more like this elevated kind of thing or whatever. Not saying elevated, but maybe more complex or whatever, versus where I feel like slasher film is much more like your meat and potatoes horror con kind of crowd. But then in that, I felt like, okay, this is not, because then the other thing is like Terrifier 2 came out, which is awesome for indie film, but also like if you don't have that level of gore and violence in your film, it's like people are like, well, you need more creative kills. I'm like, what am I gonna? I got. I'm just trying to keep it together during this whole production, you know. And so I think it was helpful. And then, you know, it's interesting because like IMDb skews male, and I feel like it's kind of interesting where you have to look at your film in a different point of view, where you have to see like, okay, I made this film. I love slashers. I feel like people who are interested in horror are going to like it. People who like slashers are going to like it. But within that, I feel like there is an actual target audience for that. Not to get off demographics, but I felt like, you know, I feel like a lot of like women and girls really related to the film more maybe than like, you know, like the male audience. And so that was kind of interesting. Or even, you know, like just more diverse audiences. And so I think that's been really interesting to talk to. And then I've talked to other people who really related to like some of the themes of the film, because they had gone through gaslighting too and emotional abuse. And so they could see the signs, and it really connected with them. So I think it's just kind of, it's like, you know, your film inside and out, you know, everything about it and all the things that like you're hoping sneak by the audience and they never see it. You know, but then I feel like there's an audience for it that's going to eventually connect. You know, it's like, even like, you know, you look at, I mean, I'm not comparing my thing to Blade Runner, but Blade Runner bombed when it came out.
Right.
Like, this is a terrible film. And then like now it's like one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. So, so I feel like sometimes your audience will find you, but I think criticism, some of it, I think I've learned now, it's like, because there's a section of like horror fans that are really into like gore and all that stuff. And I think slasher, the tough thing about slasher film is it comes with so much of an expectation from the audience. Like they're literally watching it sometimes with like a checklist. Like, okay, gore, check. Nudity, check. Creative kills, check. And it's like I talked to some dude, he's like, he kind of panned the film, but I was like, what would you want to see next? And he's like, creative kills. I'm like, is it really that? Is that it? It's not so it's just kind of funny to think about. Like,
I feel like that's one of those things with the slasher genre. I kind of had a similar conversation the other day regarding the Saw movies. It's like, I'm getting a little fatigued on franchises in general. I know that comes with the territory. As a horror fan, you're just always going to get sequels. But we were talking about how, like, something like Scream, this last one lost me a bit. It feels like now they're cashing in, because now they're not. This has nothing to do with what Scream is anymore. Like, this is now just a run-of-the-mill slasher. And then you have something like Saw, where people are like, oh, they just do the same thing over and over again. Well, if it ain't broke, I don't come to see Saw, for anything other than the formula that is a Saw movie.
Final Destination.
Exactly. Final Destination.
Yeah.
Over and over again. I'm not here to see them reinvent the wheel. I want to see Final Destination do what Final Destination does. But I feel like when it comes to slasher movies, you can only coast so far on the tropes.
Right.
But that's, I feel like, what people want to see is well, if you do anything clever with it, make the kills,
Right. Yeah. I think the interesting thing with that and like is, for me, like what I wanted to do was, because I love slasher films, and then specifically I love the 80s slasher films a lot. And then up into Scream, because we talked about Scream too. Like I remember seeing the opening night midnight show when it came out, and I was blown away. And I think the success of that meant that now for the next 10 to 20 years, we didn't really get straight slasher films anymore. We got these meta wink wink slashers, like the what is it, Freaky or whatever, where it's always like a gimmick. Like I love Final Girls, but it's like I do love that classic straight horror slasher that's just like no frills. They're not trying to be ironic about it. It's like literally life and death kind of a thing. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I just remember over COVID, like watching all of these slasher films for research, because I think I watched like 200 slasher films, just like because I wanted to not just, obviously heavy Friday the 13th comparison, but then I'm kind of a deep cut kind of person anyway, so I always want to throw the deep cuts in, and so like I'm like, I gotta watch Madman, I gotta watch The Burning, all that stuff, because it's like that's the stuff that the fans will get. They're not, if all I do is throw Friday's stuff in there, they're gonna be like, well, this guy's surface, or whatever. And so I think it's just like, and to go to the Friday the 13th films, I'm like, yeah, they're kind of slow sometimes, and they're a little boring. And and I have ADD, so I love when camera moves. I love like things that are moving. So I kind of wanted to make the most fun roller coaster version of one of those films, where it's like, just balls out, kind of like roller coaster, kind of from a point to the end.
I will say one of my favorite things about the movie was the cinematography.
Thanks.
I loved the way that it was shot. I thought it was gorgeous. I mean, some of those shots were incredible.
Thanks.
As a filmmaker, I kind of touched on this earlier when we were talking. My biggest lesson from watching Final Summer, just because we shared the locations, it really taught me you can really stretch a location. I mean, you can really, get a lot out of it. And so there were, like I said, we utilized so many of the same places that, barring building a wall in a building, like obviously we didn't have the money to do that. But
I'd be interested to ask you about, like, so when you're going to the location, like, do you write to the location? Do you look at like, okay, that's pretty cool, I want to use these kinds of things? Like, what was your kind of process for your stuff?
Expect to adding the extra shots to call my ADHD.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We kind of went about it. He just wrote it.
Yeah.
And then we were just like, okay, we're gonna write it. We're gonna try everything we can to get it just like we wrote it out. Yeah. And if not, And if not,
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the the big things with our show is that legally, it's free for a reason. I mean, we use the copyrighted music and stuff and everything. I told him that very early on because I was getting to a point as a filmmaker where I felt like I had either worked with such flaky people or discouraging people, people who, anytime any hint of ambition came up, they'd shut it down and they'd be like, well, how do you plan on doing that? And it's like, man, I don't know. But I got to a point where I was sick of it. I'm like, we're making this thing. I don't know how we're going to make it. We're going to start here and then just work our way down to whatever's realistic. And that's what, we ended up with at the end.
That's how you do it. I think
since then, I feel like, but
yeah, I feel the same. I mean, I feel like, I was on a film came to town in 2014 called Consumed. And I worked interned on that as a grip. And it just changed my life. I loved it. And I just want to keep doing it. And so I started doing that film workshop out of the back of Shatterglass on Neal Street. Yeah. I think we started around 2016 or so. And I think we did that for like 3 years, but basically all the way leading up into like final summer. Like we did a bunch of music videos and we did all this other stuff. And it just kind of kept building and building until, and it was just kind of like bringing in a C-stand, bringing all this stuff. But we kind of built our knowledge. So by the time we did our film and then with the stuff that happened with like these ripoff investors, I feel like it helped us be prepared for that, kind of thing. Because you're talking about like, yeah, it's tough because you'll find like Champaign's got a really awesome film scene. And I think that it could be really good and really strong too, like what you guys are doing too. And so I think, and then Champaign Movie Makers is great. And so it'd be awesome to have everybody kind of come together. And I think a lot of that is just finding, like when you get into certain roles, like if I work on your film, like I'm working for you, and so leave your ego at the door kind of thing. And I think sometimes I've noticed like people have a hard time just leaving their ego, and like I've worked on, like I got done with Final Summer and then I went and I was like second AC on a film. I was getting my butt handed to me every day by like the first AC, and I like wish that people on my film could have seen me just get just dogged, like every day, like just running back and forth all day long, get my ass kicked, and it's just, I think that's the secret is like, just always, that chain of command, respecting everybody's hard work. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, but
definitely. Yeah. We've experienced that a lot with Camp Nostalgic Studios. I mean, our crews are very similar. We are two separate entities, but we just keep switching off at this point, basically, hey, we need a hand over here. They'll come, exactly what you're saying, where the chain of command just flip flops, depending on where they're at. Yeah. And sometimes it's very nice because we were watching something the other day. Somebody was here and they're like, gosh, look at that wall of credits. Well, I made the comment that I am the wall. Like, like where we are currently at, like we are that entire wall of people.
Right. Yeah. That's why sometimes I just want to like bring more people on so it doesn't look like it's like just me the entire way. or I mean like this,
right.
Doing this, John doing the music, John doing the editing, kind of thing. But it's kind of like, I'm sure you guys know this too. It's like sometimes like people don't step up or people promise things and then they don't deliver. And so you're like, well, I still gotta do this. So it's like, all right, no one's gonna get it done unless you do it. So it's kind of, to go to the location thing, I remember I took my son there in the winter and I was like walking around the camp. I'm like, oh, that's a cool bridge. I like that pool. This is a cool area over here. So I was kind of writing to the location just to kind of build set pieces from it, which is why right now I feel like I'm having a harder time with the sequel stuff. Cause it's like, all right, I got this place and then what else do I have? So I feel like it's definitely a challenge to move away from a camp, because in the first one, it's like everything's at the camp. So that's your world, that's your universe. And
I will say, I was kind of amused when we were watching yours that, you kind of took that Friday the 13th route of the camp's not necessarily open. So there are no kids.
Right.
Like, yeah. I looked at him, I go, damn, why didn't we think of that? Like, why? It's like, we have no money. Why the fuck did we try to have kids in our show? And so playing it up, that Charlie Brown off camera.
Oh yeah, like in the background, like wah wah wah.
But like, you never really see all but 3 of them. The whole
right.
Yeah, and when we got into filming that, we realized this, and I think I purposely threw a line, with one of the actors being like, "Ask me where some kids are at," and I'll be like, I haven't seen any fucking kids. That's a good point.
And that's the perk of absurd comedy too.
Right.
Is that anything that got thrown our way, we were able to adjust.
Right.
And I mean, the whole thing was a big learning process. I was saying before though about being the wall is that over here that can I'm sure you understand it. You get having to juggle everything. So whenever we go to Camp Nostalgic and we're just actors, that's great. It's tell me what you want me to do. I don't have to wear any more hats.
Oh yeah,
it's nice.
Yeah, it's crazy because I mean I remember like you mentioned like the camp thing, and I don't know if it was because there was like some trash that people had not put appropriately away or whatever, because I remember I went one day and like the trash bin was overflowing. It was like everywhere, and I was like, oh my god. So I was just like taking all this foul garbage, and it was disgusting. So I don't know if they were ticked about that, but I would be. I was ticked.
yeah, we really don't know, because they were people that we hadn't seen these 2 people the entire time we've been shooting. Everything else was very welcoming and
yeah.
And then we literally came back after you guys had wrapped, and some of your stuff was still there. Some of your stuff was still in the building, and because they referenced it as our stuff when we showed.
Oh, yeah.
We were like, oh yeah, we're not those people. And when we were trying to explain that to them, they're like, we know who you are. We're like, whoa, okay, all right. And we were planning on shooting a scene with a campfire that night. So like, I guess we're not doing that.
Well, I know, like they always say, like never let a film crew film in your house. Because you think it's going to be glamorous, and you realize you just invited like a bunch of circus carnival roadies, and like the Hell's Angels to show up at your house and trample everything that you hold valuable.
I don't mean this in
gave that a green light the other night.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That was because I remember in Consume we were shooting at a house out in like Muhammad, and I think they set her up in a hotel the week that we were there. But I could tell. I was looking at some of the flowers and stuff. I'm like, yeah, she's not going to be too happy about it. Hey, what do you do? Like, right, so you film someone else's
forgiveness over permission. I've had to do that. The first short film I did, Distinct Lack of Holiday Fear. There's a scene where somebody eggs the house. I was using my cousin's house, and I didn't tell him that we were throwing the egg at his door. So I just shot it and tried to clean it, and I guess I didn't clean it to his standards because he found out. Obviously, he found out once he saw it, and he was like, I think that's how he realized. He put 2 and 2 together. He's like, is that on my front door?
Yeah, you're like, I don't know if I should tag him in this video. Yeah, I always joke. It's like people are like, well, I don't know if we should. I'm like, well, they asked us to. They said it was okay, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, who cares? It's their fault at this time. Right. No, I don't actually say that. It's just.
It was probably one of those things that, like, and I don't mean this in a negative way. It's just the nature of with a bigger budget. Yeah, I feel like you guys were probably a little more invasive of the camp than we were, because there was a ton of you. You guys needed specific things. We're like, hey, we're just happy to be here. Thanks. Like, if you let us use something, fantastic. Like anytime they'd give us entry to any building, we were just like so grateful.
Yeah. I mean, they were no money. They were really great, and I think we were always trying to be respectful too. I think that, I think it's just anything. It's like you realize what you sign up for when the circus shows up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
So,
they were trying to. I think they were trying to end their season too.
So yeah. They were great though. They were really helpful and just really wonderful people. And so
really patient too. We really enjoyed going out there all summer long.
Yeah. Well, I know we're gonna do like a Halloween screening, I think, at the camp.
Oh, that's nice.
So they must not hate us completely.
Yeah.
I might just do it as like a.
Maybe it was just us.
Hey,
who knows?
Real quick, Dale, they can hate on Chasenshep. We're good with that.
Yeah. No, I think I might be interested in doing it for like as a benefit, since they got hit with the thing. Maybe just do it like all the ticket proceeds go to the camp or something to help.
When he said something about going out there to help, he said we should call up everybody and have them come out in their camp shirts. And,
oh, totally. Yeah.
Like, remember us? We're here to help.
You. No, that's cool. So yeah, I don't know what else you guys want to talk about or no?
I will say, to put the last thing on this whole rivalry thing, it did become a point where in our lore, you basically became our Phil Collins, like the South Park situations, where we I don't think any of the jokes actually ended up making it into the finished product because so many things would change like so rapidly. But I know we had jokes in there that was like when we did evacuate the camp at the end, we like one of the episodes was supposed to start with we put a sign over our sign that says all kids have been relocated to Camp Silverlake for safety.
Oh, nice.
Just like little references to you guys across the
we should do like if we do this summer camp thing, we should have you guys, throw like an episode up before the film. That'd be kind of fun, it'd be fun to do that.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, we got time.
The connecting the dots game was a lot of fun for us, though. So many things. A big plot line in our show is how many times that Shep and I have burned down the camp over the years. And so as you're telling this story of like the camp burned down and this, this time and all this stuff, and I was like, if that doesn't sound like us, I don't know. There was just like a lot of things that were like,
right.
we could cut this together. You'd think it was us doing all this shit the whole time.
Oh yeah. No, my dad, he was a firefighter before he became a paramedic. He was a paramedic for 35 years, and then he'd always wanted to be a park ranger and a park like Forest Service firefighter. And so the camp the campfire story at the beginning is kind of a nod to him, and also because I grew up with like don't start any fires in the forest kind of thing. So it was meant to be a joke. Some people were like, oh wait, so it's so there's a killer going around. I'm like, no. It's like they took this guy's name, they threw it in this dumb story that they tell all the campers when they show up. Warren Copper's gonna, and then the whole gag is just the Smokey the Bear thing. So I thought it'd be kind of funny, as because again, it's like they're counselors, and so they're trying to scare the. Did you guys ever go to summer camp at all? Or?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Where did you guys go?
I went to a 4-H camp when I lived in Tennessee.
Okay.
That would have been like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
There were a few experiences at the camp that did end up kind of getting written into the show.
Oh yeah.
Because I know there's a line where she said something about like I thought summer camp looked like fun in the movies. I thought I'd give it a go. I went, and it was like fun like it was in the movies, and that was my experience at summer camp. I was like, this is literally like somebody shit in the pool and everything. Like I was like, this is literally like I saw my first pool. Like I had the full like summer camp experience.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning of episode 2, when we're all giving one of the lead actors love advice. Tell this story about a girl that I liked that called me a pervert. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant at the time. Gave it a Google. It was not a term of endearment.
Right.
That was a true story. That was a true story. That was the first time a girl ever called me a pervert, because I was like 3rd grade or something.
Oh, man.
Pretty and older girl, and then like one of her friends is like, you pervert. In the cabin later, I'm like, anybody know this word? Anybody got a dictionary? I'm not quite sure what this one means.
It means really cool person,
So not that experience at all. It was weird because like one of my friend's parents made him go, so he convinced me. He's like, you should go, and I'm like, how can my parents say no if I'm like, Mom, I want to go to church camp this year with him.
Where was it?
Epworth. Camp Epworth is down in like Effingham area, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I went to church, like a summer church camp. It was Camp Cedar Lake in Indiana. Okay. I went a couple of years to that, and yeah.
It was just so for me. It was I went like 8th grade, and I was going to high school. So it's like all these kids went summer camp together every year. So showing up out of nowhere, you're just like,
yeah.
I only know my friends. I lied and told them where we lived. They didn't teach us how to read, so they never noticed nothing.
Yeah. No, it was fun. Yeah, it was because I think because my daughter just went to the 4-H camp out at Allerton, and I tried to like initially reach out to them, and they're like, what are you, horror? No, hell no, kind of thing. So I think that was our response from the 4-H Allerton camp, which sucked because like when you look at it, it's like perfect It even has like the dock with like I might have stolen a couple shots from Allerton, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't. I don't know.
Man, you think it's hard for people to agree to a horror shoot? Wait till they find out you're an R-rated raunchy comedy too.
Oh
then,
yeah, that's
then they really started being like, I don't know about all this.
Yeah, but I remember looking at a lot of the camps that they shot at for Friday the 13th were a lot of Boy Scout camps. I'm like, all right, there's definitely a precedent. So I felt like it's, but then try to go to like a church camp and you're like, yeah, no.
Yeah. Actually, I do think when we were looking for camps, a church camp did come across my desk at a certain point, and I could tell they were going to be like, absolutely not.
You smoke the weeds. No, thank you. Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah, sorry about that. But then the third act, everyone is safe, so it all works out. Like the killer comes to see the error of his ways and finds, the spirit, and it's all it's all how it works out. And then
we got some stuff up our sleeve that might work for that kind of a situation.
Yeah. You just send them that cut. They don't see the real cut.
Right. Yeah. I think the moment they find out that Jesus Christ is the main character,
right. Now I remember seeing a movie
that was that Jesus always wins in our stories. So there's
we wrote him good.
Buddy Jesus, to talk about Kevin Smith, like in what was that movie? Did what was the Kevin Smith one with like the holy Buddy Jesus?
Dogma.
What's that?
Dogma.
Oh yeah. So anyway,
yeah. So to get into Kevin Smith, I met him back in October when he was on the Convenience Tour with Clerks 3. I saw Clerks 3. I bawled my eyes out. I was like, this is not what I expected. And so I was kind of gushing about Kevin Smith and Clerks and what he's meant to me over the years and stuff. My girlfriend surprised me with tickets. And
nice.
So doing the meet and greet with him, he's also aware of Camp Chasenshep. I was wearing this the night we met. He was asking me about it and stuff. And I know you said your conversation got a little hijacked with him.
Yeah.
With the meet and greet, you only have so much time.
Yeah.
But in that small window of time, like he was one of the most personable people I've met in my life. Like I never felt like so seen by another human being than I did in that moment with Kevin, where he really just was looking at me. He was talking to me. Fuck the rest of these people that are here. They'll get their turn. And I was just so impressed by that. They say don't meet your heroes, but this was a situation that really worked out, I feel like.
No, he was cool. We, I had a friend he did a movie called The Forest Hills, and it was this horror film with like Eddie Furlong and Shelley Duvall. And I saw that they were playing at Smod Castle, and I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. Congratulations. And they had a packed house and all that stuff. And they were from New Jersey too. And so he was like, yeah, you should submit your film to play there. I'm like, that's never going to happen. But I'm like, but the thing I've learned throughout all this stuff is like, you're like, yeah, but I'll give it a shot. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to tell you no. Oh my God, not that, not the no, like I've heard that a million times. So I was like, all right. So we submitted to them and told them a little bit about, just the indie nature of our film and all the stuff we went through. And they're like, yeah, why don't you come on out? It'll be awesome. So I was kind of floored by that. And I was like, this is awesome. And so we went out, me and my friend Paul, who was the grip on my film. We got in a car, and Paul
Benson.
Paul Benson. Yeah. He's like one of the best dudes. He's so fun.
He's a great dude. He started as my sound guy, ended as my DP for Distinct Lack of Holiday Cheer, my first show.
Oh, nice. Yeah. He's like the funniest person.
Yeah.
So like to have him on set is always great because you're going to be laughing the whole time, and he's just a good dude. And so me and him drove out to New Jersey. It was like 16 hours straight there. We were like totally loopy out of our heads by the time we got in there. I think as soon as we hit New Jersey, we just both started talking like we were like, in like Goodfellas or something like that. I don't know. It was ridiculous. But then the day of the show, we went and I think Kevin was screening Jaws down the way. And we had a couple of people come out. It wasn't huge, but I think it was just, to me, it was like going back to Clerks, like you brought up, and like what that stuff means to me. And like I graduated high school in 94 and I went to SIU for a little bit for film, but I dropped out. But it was kind of the era of that, like Miramax, like Tarantino and Kevin Smith and the indie you know, I don't like the auteur word, but like the indie filmmakers who are kind of making waves. And I always thought what I loved about Kevin was he always seemed so personable and so down to earth about, you know, just making films is not easy, you know. And so it just, to me, it felt like it was worth it to go out there to kind of follow in his footsteps in a way and kind of pay respect to the indie filmmakers who have kind of paved the way for all the rest of us to be inspired and to try our own films. And so that was great. And then talking to him was fun because yeah, like we drove past Matawan Creek, which was like the site of the 1916 New Jersey shark attack that Jaws was based off of. And so when he walked in, he's like, "Oh, how you guys doing?" I'm like, "Oh man, we were at Matawan, saw that thing." And so he was just cool. We were just down. We were just talking it up. And I think the one thing I've learned is like, you know, you meet a lot of like other filmmakers who are kind of further along, and there is this kind of like Wizard of Oz mentality sometimes where you think like, "Oh, this guy is going to do it for us," or this guy, like if he, like I was in a band where like, you know, you'd be like, "Oh, can you send him my demo CD so he can listen to it and he can see the genius of our band and we're going to be signed and be rich." Like that never happens. And and you just have to like, I feel like you have to kind of always be ready to just accept that it's always going to be hard. You have to do it yourself. No one's going to, the cavalry's never coming. And just enjoy those moments when you get to be talking with like that dude, or you're in a crowd with people watching your film and they're laughing and they're not like telling you like this sucks, you know. I don't know. It's just a little soapbox moment there, but it was just great to go there and just hang with him for a little bit. And then you know, the theater manager was awesome. He was a producer of his, and so I spent a lot of time talking with him about film. And to me, it's like I get like he's kind of he's got that side of him where everybody else is trying to hang out and stuff. And it's like, but I always like the behind the scenes stuff. That's what I feel like like when you go to horror cons and you're seeing the actors, but then I talked to this one dude who was on all of these like Wes Craven and John Carpenter films because he was a stunt guy. Oh. His stories were like insane. So I'm like, I'm here for this guy. I don't care about like, you know, this other famous dude. Like I'm just gonna hang with this guy. He's got the awesome stories about the real stuff, you know. Anyway.
I maybe you've read this or not. If not, I recommend True Indie by Don Coscarelli.
Yes, I love that. I have that. Yeah, it's great.
It's an excellent read.
Oh yeah,
I also just really enjoy those like behind the scenes stories.
Well, I love what he said about how like an independent film is not a studio film where it's like your General MacArthur rolling in with all these tanks and all this stuff. It's like you're like the Viet Cong, like in the jungle trying to make this impossible miracle happen with like 13 other people at best, you know, with like a light, maybe a bouncing board, you know, stuff like that. And so I think that's what I loved about his film. And even to go to all the stuff they did on Phantasm, you know, like how they worked out all of those problems. The fact that the mausoleum is like contact paper on the walls, the marble is just contact. I just love that stuff, you know, because then you know it's like there's so much smoke and mirrors that you can get away with.
I had said recently, I feel like people, like filmmakers these days, like newer filmmakers, I feel like the best way to learn is, I feel like some people get a little too caught up in the new technology, and there's nothing wrong with technology, but if you really want to learn how to make the movies from the ground up, watch this older stuff, especially horror films. I mean, you know, obviously the groundwork of like Halloween and Evil Dead and these movies that are just like these total indie, you know, endeavors.
Oh yeah, I can talk about that in 1 second. Yeah, I think going to like what your point is about and that was and this will kind of lead us into this next part where we're talking about the lighting or whatever, was like, you know, again, like because they're shooting on location, like a lot of those 70s films and the 80s films are shooting on location. They don't have green screen, all that kind of stuff. And so you're really learning the mechanics of the filmmaking. And then now what I love is like after COVID hit, I just bought a projector and a screen and I would watch movies on my big screen. And there's something to be said for watching it on a bigger screen because you're really seeing much more of like the building blocks of the film. And even like one of the big things I kind of took away, even seeing Final Summer on the big screen myself, was like, oh wow, like I want to do more like mediums and masters. I don't want to do so many close-ups. I need to back off of my close-ups sometime because I think, you know, you don't think about it because you're normally used to seeing your film on an iPhone or on your Mac or whatever. And you're not seeing it huge like this. And a 20-foot tall head is a lot to look at sometimes, you know. So like just like so instead of like up here where it's like, hey, how you doing? Like this is on your 20-foot screen, you know, you kind of back off a little bit. And then this becomes your close up or your, you know, kind of thing. And so I think that's where one of the lessons I learned. But to get to lighting, yeah, we looked at a lot of films from that time because like the first Friday the 13th, it's so dark. You know, there's scenes where it's like it just looks like there's a black box. Like they're only lighting the actor. You know, it's just like front lighting the actor, but they didn't throw a light behind them. And so I talked to. So that was one thing that we wanted to do. So I looked at the first season of Stranger Things, and I just started watching a lot of how they would light the night exteriors, you know. And it was like all of a sudden I was reading a lot, and we did a lot of like just different kind of lighting tests. Where one thing was, there was this big helium filled like light balloon that you could like fill up, and then you could float it around. And so we filled up like some ridiculous thing like 60, 70 helium like white balloons, and we had it in a big like plastic tarp that we were gonna basically kind of move around with us, and then you would just shoot your big light into it, and so it would just like the fall off from that. The problem was it gets cold at night, so the balloons don't rise anymore, so you're like, okay, well, this is so you know, unfortunately we found that out the hard way, which was like, well, that's not going to work. So we basically thought about lighting in terms of layers. So and it was funny because then I would watch the Stranger Things episode. I'm like, okay, I'm watching this one scene where the kid like rides from the back all the way through to the scene and he lands in the front. And it's like, oh yeah, he's going to land right by this mailbox. I can tell it's already soft lighting right there, you know, like the hero lighting. And then that mid lighting, it's like you directly hit the ground with the light. And then deep in the back, you front light your background or whatever, you know. And then and the other thing I kind of took away from when I went to this ASC workshop was sometimes just put a light in the shot, you know. And so I would do that too. Like, I don't really care. So like, and it's just, and to me, part of that was going back to 2009 Friday the 13th, where I find it kind of hilarious to have lens flare in the forest. Yeah. So it's kind of, so sometimes like people are like, what, this lens flare, but I'm like, this is me just having fun with it, not being too serious about it. But so that was kind of, so basically what we kind of developed a system where we would take a big 8x frame, and we would have like a 600 or, you know, like those aperture, because we basically just used all LED lighting. We didn't have any condor kind of thing, because now you just get a condor and you blast it with your 18K and that'd be it or whatever. But that's like if you have money, which we didn't. So so we would just take like, so basically like there'd be out of the shot, there'd be a big 8x frame with light hitting into it, and that would be like our soft moonlight. And then like further down, we would have light hitting the ground, and then in the back. But then also we would have that tube of death thing where you just pump like fog through it, and it would be like this 300-yard tube of death. And then that would be in between the light and the actor. So like now you have all this haze coming up, and that's catching the light, and that's raising your ambient levels. And so, you know, so there's just lots of tricks. And then the other thing is like we would learn to kind of use the height of the surroundings. So like we would be in that ravine, and we would just stage all of our lights on the edge of the ravine, on the top of it, because basically it would be like moonlight. Well, the moonlight's coming down, you know. And so it was just a lot of that. And or we had like a moon pole light that we would use that was diffused. So sometimes we just, in places where there was no possibility, we would just have it on a pole like with a V-mount battery. And so it was tough, you know. But, you know, I don't know. It's just I think I felt like sometimes my interior lighting was less consistent than the exterior lighting. But, you know, I think the first night that we did because we shot like 2 days, and then we did 2 splits of like 2 to 2. And that first night that we did a split, I think everybody realized how ambitious this was and how insane this was. Because I think the end of that first night, everybody just looked like shell shocked. It was like, ugh. What have we done to ourselves? This is insane, you know. Because again, it was like there was like maybe 13 of us. They were all out of our indie film workshop. This is probably the first film that anybody had been on, you know. I think I was the only one, maybe one other person had been on a feature before. Everybody else was like basically fresh green, you know. And so they were amazing. I mean, it was hard work, you know. You guys were there, you know, how like carting all your crap through all the hills and stuff.
There were a few shots where I'm like, what poor bastard had to go down that hill, you know? Like we knew what it was, and I was like, that had to have sucked to travel down there.
It did, yeah.
We felt for you.
The bridge scene, because we lit the bridge.
Was the shot. I was like, that sucked for whoever had to travel on down there.
Yeah. Well, because Chad had like a little RV, like a little buggy, and so we had load that up, and we were driving all night back and forth. But a lot of it we were just carrying hand, you know, just carrying it in, you know. And so it was. I remember that was the one night where we finished early because the crew had worked so hard to light it, and just everybody just looked like that. And so we could have shot longer, but I was like, let's just wrap early because let's just celebrate this, that we did this. Right. I remember telling everybody before we ever got to that, I'm like, that's going to be the worst day on set because it's just you know, trucking that crap way out there. So anyway, I could talk about this all night, but yeah.
Well, I guess we should probably talk about EFT.
Yeah.
Well, how did you come to get involved with EFT, and what can you tell us about your segment?
Sure. Yeah, I was friends with Ben Harrell for a long time. He's one of the other directors on the anthology, and then he introduced me to Ash, and because Ash did his what was the UFO documentary that he was doing. Yeah, and so we started talking a bit because we were talking about distribution and, you know, people to talk to and marketing and all that stuff. And so then we just kind of became friends, and he came to a couple like film mixers locally, and I just really liked his whole vibe and everything. And then he mentioned he was doing this anthology short, and I've literally been staring at Final Summer for the last 2 years. So I'm like, well, hey, you know, if you need anybody to shoot something, man, I'd be down to throw my hat in, you know, because I'd love to look at anything other than Final Summer. Because, you know, it's like, you know, at this point it's 2 years older than me, and I'm like, oh my God, like I just want something new to just look at for a while. And so he told me the premise, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. And it was, you know, the anthologies are kind of fun because you get this kind of basic premise, and then you get to just run with it. And so I'm excited. So we're shooting our piece this Friday, and part of me is like excited, and part of me is like horrified to go back and shoot more. So, but again, it's like you take the lessons that you learn from going through the wall, like, you know, like, okay, like let's minimize our characters, let's minimize our locations. This is what we're gonna do, you know, like kind of, sorry. And so I think that was kind of helpful. So I'm really excited for it. It's kind of the working title on it is like Fast Times at Area 52, which is just, you know, I wanted to do kind of a sci-fi end of the world thing. And I love like, you know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I thought it'd be really funny if, you know, you do like a horror comedy, sci-fi kind of short. That kind of starts out a bit horror comedy-esque, and then it goes a little bit more like horror sci-fi, I think. And so it's pretty fun. I'm just excited to kind of get back into it again, you know, and shoot something spherical this time, not anamorphic. Because I don't know if you've ever shot anything anamorphic, but it's kind of a nightmare sometimes.
Nope.
I don't recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to see the finished product of EFT altogether. Like I said, we know details about at least 2 of the shorts, so it'll be really cool to just see it all. Yeah.
You know, I know like Miles Valentine and Jace Jameson are coming back from Final Summer. They're going to be in the film. Nice. And then Heather, who was actually doing our hair and makeup on our film, but she's an actor too, and so she's going to be in it. And then there's there's 2 other actors that I always wanted to work with that are also local, Mindy and Matthew, who was in Final Summer also, but he was just one of the you see the back of his head during like the walking through the field kind of at the end with the the search and rescue team, but he's going to be in it too. And so it's kind of fun. Like, have you ever seen Ghost Adventures at all? Yeah. So it's kind of like, imagine Ghost Adventures, but they're like ufologist kind of dudes, you know. And so I always laugh at Ghost Adventures because they're like, you know, they show up and they have like the Ed Hardy like jeans, and they're like tattoos, like they're like Ghost Adventures, and it's like explosions and stuff in the background. So I wanted to have it like that, kind of like a riff on that, but then they just go to like you know, like what they think is like, you know, this abandoned Air Force base that actually has something there, you know. So it'll be fun. I'm excited because I'm going to do some fun stuff with some levitation shots where someone gets like abducted, you know, pulled up into the sky, kind of a thing.
Nice.
So there'll be some fun. Like, so I'm kind of interested to do some like kind of practical and some kind of visual effects in this one.
That's kind of how we're feeling with our next project, because summer camp was a camp all through and through, just filmmaking boot camp from start to finish.
Oh yeah.
But you know, practical effects we've learned a little bit more every time.
Oh yeah.
We just did green screen like visual effects with our last 420 short we did, and so this next one, Exorcism, we are throwing it all in together.
Yeah.
And trying new things we haven't before, really trying to elevate from what we've done previously.
If you guys are free this Friday, I think we're going to be shooting. So feel free to like, I'll message you outside of this, but it'd be cool to come up, because I know we're doing like, you know, like the location shoot, but then we're doing some like green screen effects too as well. So that'll be kind of fun. And so, yeah.
Our secret mission is to infiltrate F from top to bottom. We've already made it into two shorts. So let's
mission accomplished. Yeah. Thank you to Gayla for that comment too. Thank you so much. I think to go to the Champagne thing, I think like, you know, it's exciting what you guys are doing too. And I think the more we get together, I think that's the better, because like to talk to like, you know, to share like some of the things I've learned through going through the film festivals and dealing with distributors and sales reps, and it's all kind of game to really keep the power and the ball in the distributor side of things and the sales rep side of things. And they're banking on indie filmmakers not being educated and not coming together as a team and being informed. And so I feel like the more we can work together and the more that we can protect ourselves from all the exploitation. Because like, you know, like 4 days before we started in our film, like I had to turn down $50,000 that was going to be our budget, because these guys were ripping off the film. You know, they were basically stealing all the IP, and they were talking about it like, oh, you know, it's not what it looks like. I'm like, it's exactly what it looks like. Screw you guys. Yeah. And then and I was, you know, go figure, later on the primary investor, he got under investigation by the SEC for ripping off seniors to like $67 million in this gold fraud scheme. I'm like, I just want to make a slasher film in the woods, dude. Like, I'm not trying to.
Right.
All I want to do is just a simple thing, and it's like I get involved with these total con artist psychos. So, you know, so like that was the thing. Like going to like Days of the Dead, I met all these great guys like Charlie Queen and you know, guys from Chicago. Yeah, my friend Nathan, who's down in Kentucky, and he's a film producer down there. And I think that we've kind of, you know, through that network, I've kind of seen where there's a team coming out of that to build more. And then to go to Champagne, even, it's like, well, Rob and my friend Rob Stern and Sarah Sharp, they do the Line film company, and they're producing a lot of films in Chicago. Now they're down here. They just had Brooklyn 45 come out. That just came to Shudder. And then Luke Boyce's film Revealer, they produced that. That was on Shudder too. And so they're bringing films down here. We were on a film a couple of weeks ago that was shooting downtown Champagne, where they turned the street into like Christmas for a little while there. But and then they're starting like a studio up in Rantoul. So I feel like there's things coming here, and to kind of keep building the scene is great, because that's the big thing. I think it's just not only me, but everybody else, and like you guys doing your thing, and it's cool. And it's fun too, because then I feel like you realize, like I realized with the short with my segment, it's like, who am I going to cast? I'm like, oh yeah, duh. Like, oh, Miles, he was in Final Summer. Right. Like, oh yeah, Jace, he was in Final Summer too. Like, let's kill him again, kind of a thing, you know.
To speak to your cast a bit,
yeah.
There's some member. Well, one of them in the opening scene, my buddy John Fall. We grew up together And so when I saw him, I totally forgot he said he was in it. So that was
exciting. Yeah. He always makes me laugh. There's a scene there's like one shot where he's walking away from like the Fabian's character. He's like, oh, he's out here in the woods, isn't he? And he does this laugh that always makes me laugh every time I hear him do this kind of funny, corny laugh. I don't know what it is. I just always laugh at his thing.
But yeah, there was a couple people I think we had worked with. Few we're getting ready to work with. Miles Valentine being one of them. We're working with him soon. Heather Harlow we're working with soon. Jace and I have been in like this constant like we circle each other. He came ready for me for a project, and it's like nothing ever lines up. I feel like with the two of us, but I'm hoping to work with him one of these days.
Yeah. Well, I really like him a lot, and to go to like the actors that we flip-flopped, like I really like Catherine Bokenkamp too. I think she's a phenomenal actor as well. I know she's really mad at me, but sorry, but like, but I like her a lot too, and so I think there's a lot of like great talent that are local here that are just kind of incredible. And Miles, I feel like is like. He's kind of like the secret weapon of Final Summer in a way. And
yeah, honestly, watching him in Final Summer, we're shooting the short he's in later on this year, and we're with the stuff that we're getting ready to get into. Chasenshep has become our sandbox to play with all sorts of different genres and tones, and so we're starting to do some projects where we're either supporting characters or hardly in it at all to introduce other characters into this mix. And his is one of those first ones we're doing that with. And
nice.
It's more like a romantic comedy.
Interesting.
So it's not. And then, but we're really looking forward to working.
Well, he's such a good actor. I love working with him because he's so much fun. And, I think comedy is hard to do. And so it's, but I feel like they all have such great like sense of timing and, so it's just, so I think like, that's the thing. He's like, you don't always need these like name actors in your films. I think like we always get that mindset of like, oh, I need to get this one person who used to be in this other film to be in the film because then people will pay attention. But I think you don't really need to. I think it's just making a good film and making sure the sound is good. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. Get good.
The one hurdle we still haven't gotten over yet.
Oh, it's so hard, man. And then of course, like when that's the big thing I think going forward is I'm thinking of like, okay, what can I write that's going to help me get good sound, like interiors, so I don't have to have that generator running the whole time, like in the background, like a lawnmower.
Like the downside of being a two-man crew is that like. We have sound equipment, we have lights, we have nobody to run any of these things, so we have to choose not to use it sometimes and just do what we can.
Yeah. No, it's cool, man. I don't know. I'm just trying to think if there's anything.
I will say the last thing before we go, what can you tell us about Final Summer Part 2?
Yeah, let's see.
Does it take place in a mall? Am I right about this?
Yes, it actually does. There's these killer robots, and Dick Miller's in it too. So, no, I'm just kidding. Have you guys seen Chopping Mall at all?
I haven't. I'm familiar. I haven't seen it.
You have to see Chopping Mall. It's amazing. Yeah. First off, Kelly Maroney's in it. She's great. But no, so Final Summer 2, it kind of came about because, I always kind of planned it as a trilogy. And so the first film, the kind of theme of it is like fight or flight. And so it's kind of related to the stages of PTSD and the stuff that I went through, going through like my situation with this kind of terrifying, abusive gaslighting stuff. But the second one, I wanted to be more about the chaos that kind of opens up when you're dealing with trying to figure out like what's true anymore, because you've been in this situation that's kind of insane, and so now you're trying to come out of that. And then I thought about how like the situation in that is like you're confronted by what is really true versus what you've been told to be true through the gaslighting and stuff. And so I thought that was interesting to think about in terms of a theme like how the truth is deadly or the truth is a killer kind of a thing. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I was writing this completely elaborate, convoluted like take on the story, which made me understand why sequels are so hard. because they always go like, because you don't ever really intend anything beyond that. You're just intending like the story at hand and not this other story. And so now you're like, oh shoot, how do I get this thing, that thing, and the other thing to make sense? And so you're like, instead of one villain, you have like 8. You're like, okay, this sucks. And so I was at a festival a couple of weeks ago, or like a month ago, and this guy's like, man, I really thought it was going to be this character at the end of the film. And it was so good. I was like, oh, I'm like, that was such a good idea. I was like, damn it. I'm like, I wish I would have thought of that, because I would have reshot a couple of things in the film to lead up to that. But I don't think I was ever going to be here. You know what I mean? Like, so the story, I pitched it to this other actor, and they loved the idea. And so I was like, yeah. And the more I kind of wrote more to that, the more everything really clicked into place, is like, oh, this is great. Because, like with Halloween Ends, the big thing people complain about with that one was like, oh, well, he wasn't in the previous one or whatever. And so, not to give anything away, other than that, whoever the villain in part 2 is might be in part 1 also. So, just throwing it out there. And it'll be, I think it's going to be really exciting. And, it basically takes place in 1993. So there's a 2-year time jump, and it moves away from the camp and goes into the town. And so there's a bit more of a police procedural to part 2. So I would say there's elements of like some of my favorite films, like Seven and Silence of the Lambs. So there's that. And I'm just trying to balance between like leaning more into the horror and still keeping that kind of heart and characters you care about and sense of humor to it. So kind of like, it's kind of a nod to my dad, because my dad was a paramedic for a long time. So a lot of the main cast are like, EMTs on an overnight shift. So I think that'll be really fun. And I've talked to a lot of other actors. I got, Ari Lehman from Friday the 13th is one. I haven't announced it yet, but and he hasn't announced either, but he's coming in. And then I got a couple other faces too. But there's just a really good team on part 2 coming along. And I think it's really the crux of it is, if part 1 connects, if people like it, that's where I think part 2 will come in. Because even doing the short right now, like, I'm like, oh, I'm just so exhausted. I think I've just been working nonstop, for like 3-4 years on this thing, especially since the editing phase. And now it's like with post, and then film festivals and distributors. And it's like, it's exhausting, you're just fried. And so, and I know like this one is going to have to be bigger. So, so there's that. So it's kind of like,
if you need a couple of mall rats to kill off.
Hell yeah. Well, I think the thing I'm excited about, and this is why, to go to we were talking earlier, and see, I can talk about this all day, but we went way over the hour. But I want it to feel like, I feel like I don't want it to be considered a Friday the 13th clone. I want it to stand on its own. And I think one of the lessons I kind of learned from the first one is, don't do a film so in the mold of another film. And I feel like I just watched it the other day, just to kind of, we had all our power out, and I was like, well, I do have Final Summer on my laptop, so we can watch it if you want. We got nothing else to do. So we watched it, and I'm just like, this is not, I feel like the trappings are what get in the way of people really seeing it for something different than Final Summer. Like, yeah, there's some meta to it, which is intentional. Like, I feel like it, like, like Scream, like these are like, in Scream, kids watch horror movies. Like, I feel like in our film, they've seen Friday the 13th. So like, when they're making comments, it's like a joke on that stuff, and but I think there are elements of it that are not like the zombie dude in the mask in the woods. There's a point to everything, and so anyway, but I think I've learned is like, I want to at least do one more attempt at Final Summer before I give up on it, kind of thing. Because I really feel like I feel like we're onto something. They're really close. And I look at the success of like Terrifier 2, and how he kind of was consistent with his idea. Like, he knew Terrifier had some success there, but let's see what we can do with like a little bit more budget. And to me, it's like, let's see what we can do with any budget.
Right.
Versus like, not having to deal with like con artists trying to rip off the film 4 days before I start. So I'm a complete nightmare to work with, and a complete stress ball the entire time, losing my damn mind, on set. Like, I'd love to be in a shooting condition that's not completely like batshit insane, you know.
We have our fair share of chaos with a Chasenshep shoot just because of the nature of the small crew and budget and all that. But we always have a good time. We always make sure that, you know, whatever we're doing, we're having a good time, not stressing too much at the end of the day. Because a lot of what we recently bringing in all these new actors, you know, having to pitch a character to somebody, I feel like we really got to give them the context of this crazy thing that we're building. And like I was reading it off as I was typing it, and I texted him. I'm like, we sound like we should be locked up, like in a psych ward. But I'm reading this, it's like if we weren't creative, we would have some serious issues.
Oh, that's completely relatable. Yeah, I was talking to G. I was talking
to this stuff all the time. You know, when we shot this 420 short back in April, that was the first time we brought back our summer camp cast and kind of alluded to this like kind of multiversal story that we're brewing up, and with such ambitious, you know, we have a laundry list of projects at this point that's taken us a few years to get through, but we've decided, you know, it's all ambitious, it's all pretty high concept stuff, but we're either going to do all of this with absolutely no money, or somewhere along the way somebody's going to pick it up and help us out a little bit.
Well, I think that's the thing, and I went to Days of the Dead in Indianapolis recently, and I was listening to the Night of the Living Dead panel. I got to meet Judith Odia too, and she was like really wonderful. But I remember she said that, and it was wonderful to think about Night of the Living Dead and hear it from their mouths talking about how much of an indie film it was and how much everybody shared hats on it, and you know It was just, I remember Judith said that we made the best film we could with the resources that we had. And I just love that, because that's 100% every time you go out there, and you're always against, I don't have money, I don't have time, I just lost the light, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, despite it all, like you just persevere and you do the thing. And that's why I think I'm always blown away by the fact that we're even here talking about the film we did, you know, because I'm like, you know, we lost all that money, constant hurdles at a mutiny near like mid shoot, all this stuff, all these things like that should sink us. And somehow like just things keep happening, you know, so it's kind of incredible. So I feel like it's
kind of fun to hear that we had similar experiences on different levels.
Oh yeah. I think it's just always hard. And no matter what, like if you give up, it's like, you're never going to see if things happen. And I always laugh because like this happened early on, and I think sometimes like you have to listen to like things whisper to you, you know, like the universe whispers to you. And sorry to talk, we'll wrap it up here. I love talking about film, so I talk about this all day. But like early on, I went to go talk to Aaron Munoz, who teaches acting for camera at U of I, and he was at Cranert. And you know, the other thing was like, oh, he's Barb's dad in season 2 of Stranger Things. I'm like, oh, this is cool, I'd love to go talk to him. And I end up doing a short film with him during COVID at the camp too. It was like a Civil War short. But I got on the elevator at Cranert to go up to talk to him. This guy got on with me, and he had like blue coveralls, and he had a big kitchen knife in his hand. And I was just like, what in the hell is it? Like, this is the most insane thing to me. I'm literally going to talk to this dude about a slasher film. And like, this guy looks like exactly like Michael Myers without the mask, gets on with the kitchen knife. And I just started laughing, you know, and he probably thought I was nuts or something like that. But I'm like, what are the odds? And I went to tell Aaron, I'm like, this is going to sound like I made this up, but this just happened. And I don't know what that means. But sometimes I just want to keep pushing this because I'm curious about what that meant, you know.
Oh, I know. I mean, I digged it. I thought that movie was hella entertaining, dude.
Oh, thanks.
And I think, like, for me, you know, all the horror movies I've ever watched or anything, it's the number one thing to get me to go back and watch it again. You know.
Oh yeah.
Is that it's because, you know, even, you know, me and him watching it, we were all into horror, so the whole time, you know, we're like, oh no, I think this person will be the killer.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, then it gets you hooked, and then you know we had a thunderstorm roll through, so then we're all like, "This is really making us, you know,
yeah.
get the vibe here." So I think
yeah.
all the hurdles and stuff, I still think, you know, you guys knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much. Yeah, we'll be doing a hometown screening coming up in August, and I'll release details on that too. But yeah, and then we're gonna hit streaming later this summer. But yeah, I'd love to like work with you guys too, because I feel like, you know, like it'd be fun to bring us all in and build. Because, you know, I think the cool thing I love is just meeting other filmmakers who are passionate about film and want to do more. And then it's like you get into that, like, you know, like gear swap thing where like, oh, you guys need to borrow the Dana Dolly, go for it. Or like, you guys have this light, I need an extra hand, you know. And that's how we build a scene, you know. And it's
and I think as well, I was talking to Dave at Camp Nostalgic about this the other day, that Dave was saying he couldn't do what we do. He's like, I would really have to get in a very specific mindset to understand how you two operate and
right.
And you know, it's vice versa. I mean, they have a very specific vision as well, and it's just like I respect any filmmaker that has like a vision, and you know, if I can come and help with that, you know, I'm very open to it. You know,
absolutely.
I'm all for collaboration.
Yeah, we gotta do it, man. So yeah, well, awesome. Thank you guys so much again.
We'll bypass the one time for the mind tonight.
Oh, awesome, yeah.
we'll go right into the trailer. John, stick around for when we kill the feed. A lot of people jump off at this point.
Thanks.
Everybody who joined us, thank you very much, John, for joining us.
Yes.
Great to finally chat with you about summer camp. So we'll leave you now with the trailer for Final Summer. Go follow them on Facebook. Probably is that the best way to stay up to date on the film? And
Final Summer Movie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. I'm probably most active on Instagram. I'm always in there ranting about some movie I'm watching or whatever. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. We'll see y'all next week with Ben Harrell.
All right, thank you.
Back in 1978, there was a terrible fire here. Some kid left a campfire alone. Winds picked up, and it started to grow. The fire spread through the forest, burning everything in its path. They dug into the ground as their last hope. One of the rangers, a man named Warren Copper, started chopping a tree, trying to start a fire line. After the fire passed, all they could find was Warren's charred skeleton. Years later, locals claimed to see this strange figure with a skull for a head, carrying an axe, guarding the woods in the middle of the night. Better run, because Warren Copper